Part 1: The Unexpected Gift. The Galactic Council chamber was a grand structure, its walls adorned with shimmering crystals that refracted light into a spectrum of colors. Commander Yarrick stood at the center of this opulent space, feeling both honored and bewildered as he faced a sea of Zenthari dignitaries. Their elongated forms were draped in flowing robes that glimmered like starlight against the backdrop of the chamber's ethereal glow. Yarrick shifted uncomfortably under the scrutiny of their inscrutable gazes. He had just returned from a harrowing mission that had saved their planet from an impending asteroid collision, a feat that had required every ounce of his skill and courage. Now, standing before this assembly, he felt exposed. "Commander Yarrick," began High Chancellor Voss, her voice smooth yet commanding, "in recognition of your bravery and service to our people, we bestow upon you a gift." As she gestured toward the side of the chamber, Yarrick's heart sank. Standing there was Lyra, a striking figure with iridescent skin that shimmered in hues of blue and green. Her eyes glowed like twin moons in the dim light, and her presence radiated an otherworldly grace that was both captivating and intimidating. "This is Lyra," Voss continued. "May she serve you well." Yarrick opened his mouth to protest but quickly closed it again. Rejecting such a gift could jeopardize the fragile alliance he had worked so hard to secure between humans and Zenthari. Instead, he forced a smile and nodded stiffly. "Thank you," he managed to say, though his mind raced with confusion and concern. Lyra stood silently beside him, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the assembly with an air of calm detachment. Yarrick felt an inexplicable tension in her presence. She was not merely a companion, there was something deeper beneath her serene exterior. As he turned away from the council chamber later that day, Yarrick found himself grappling with mixed emotions. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. He was now not only responsible for his crew but also for this enigmatic being who had been thrust into his life without warning. Back aboard the starship Horizon, the atmosphere was markedly different from the formalities of the council chamber. The crew, a diverse mix of humans and Zenthari, greeted him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright skepticism when they learned about his new companion. "Is she going to bunk with us or get her own quarters?" asked First Officer Kellen, raising an eyebrow as he leaned against the bulkhead. "Quarters are negotiable," Yarrick replied tersely, rubbing his temples in frustration at how easily this conversation had veered into awkward territory. Lyra stood quietly beside him, observing the crew with those luminous eyes that seemed to see right through them. She tilted her head slightly as if cataloging their dynamics, a move that made several crew members shift uncomfortably under her gaze. "You run a tight ship," she remarked dryly after witnessing Kellen's teasing demeanor. "Don't encourage him," Yarrick muttered under his breath while trying to maintain some semblance of order among his crew. Over the next few days aboard the Horizon, Lyra's presence became both a curiosity and a challenge for everyone on board. She shadowed them during their routines with an unsettling precision, always appearing exactly where she wasn't expected to be. During one particularly chaotic meal in the mess hall, Kellen recounted their last mission with exaggerated flair while gesturing wildly with his hands. Suddenly, Lyra appeared at his side out of nowhere. "Ah! Where did you come from?" Kellen exclaimed in surprise. "Engineering," she replied coolly before adding with a hint of sarcasm, "but please continue, I'm fascinated by your ability to rewrite history." Laughter erupted around the table as Kellen blushed at being caught off guard yet again by this mysterious woman who seemed to navigate their ship with ease. Despite these moments of levity, Yarrick couldn't shake off his unease about Lyra's true purpose on board. She was observant, too observant, and he began to suspect she was studying them for reasons beyond mere curiosity. One evening while reviewing reports in his quarters, Yarrick noticed Lyra standing by his viewport gazing out into space. He approached her cautiously. "What do you see out there?" he asked softly. Lyra turned her head slightly but didn't respond immediately. After a moment of silence filled only by the hum of the ship's engines, she finally spoke. "The vastness can be overwhelming," she said thoughtfully. But it also holds infinite possibilities. Yarrick frowned at her cryptic response but chose not to press further. Instead, he returned to his reports while keeping an eye on her from time to time. Her presence felt like an enigma wrapped in layers he had yet to unravel. As days turned into weeks aboard the Horizon, Yarrick found himself increasingly drawn into an intricate dance between duty and intrigue, an uncharted territory where trust would be tested against hidden agendas lurking just beneath the surface of their mission together. Part 2: Shadows in the Engine Room. The Starship Horizon hummed with renewed tension as First Officer Kellen conducted routine diagnostics in the engine bay. Commander Yarrick watched Lyra from the observation deck, her hands gliding over the plasma regulators with unnatural precision. Her iridescent skin cast prismatic reflections on the machinery, making her appear like a mirage among the greasy steel components. Kellen, muttering to Engineer Voss, "She's been recalibrating systems for hours. Doesn't even ask for schematics." Engineer Voss, scratching his beard, "Either she's a prodigy or a saboteur. Either way, I'm keeping my wrench close." Lyra's sudden freeze caught Yarrick's attention. Her fingers hovered over a coolant valve as her luminous eyes narrowed, the first crack in her serene facade. The unseen flaw. Yarrick descended to confront her. "Problem, Lyra?" She didn't look up. "Your starboard plasma conduit has microfractures. Left unrepaired, it would have ruptured during tomorrow's warp jump." The revelation stunned the crew. Voss inspected the conduit with trembling hands. "She's right. How'd we miss this?" Lyra's response chilled the room. "Human diagnostic protocols lack thoroughness. The security breach." That night, alarms shattered the ship's artificial dusk. Yarrick found Lyra in the restricted data core, her hand fused with the access terminal through bioluminescent tendrils extending from her palm. "Yarrick, drawing pulse pistol, step away. Now." "Lyra," calmly, "you should be thanking me. I just purged 3 tracking programs planted during our last dock." Security logs later confirmed her claim. Hidden malware had been transmitting their coordinates to uncharted sectors. The crews divide. At mess hall breakfast, tensions erupted. "Medic Rin, she saved us from becoming space dust." Weapons Officer Tarek, slamming his tray, "Convenient she finds threats only she can solve." Kellen cornered Yarrick in the armory. "Captain, that thing's either our guardian angel or a Trojan horse. Either way, we're flying blind." The cryptic warning. Lyra appeared in Yarrick's quarters unsummoned, her usual glow dimmed. "Your people's distrust is logical, and dangerous. What comes next will require faith you're unprepared to give." When Yarrick demanded clarity, she placed a trembling hand against the viewport. The stars beyond distorted briefly, revealing a hidden pattern. Coordinates? A warning? Before fading. "Yarrick, what was that?" Lyra, retreating, "What your eyes aren't ready to see." As the horizon approached the volatile Krillian nebula, Yarrick realized the true test wasn't navigating spatial anomalies, but deciphering the enigma walking his halls. The gift had become a mirror, reflecting every crack in his command, and humanity's readiness for truths beyond their comprehension. Part 3: The Fractured Alliance. The Starship Horizon shuddered violently as crimson emergency lights bathed the engine room in apocalyptic hues. Commander Yarrick gripped a plasma-warped railing, watching Chief Engineer Rhea battle the overheating warp core with a mix of fury and desperation. Rhea, yelling over alarms, stabilizers failed at 98% load. "We've got 3 minutes before this tub becomes stardust." Lyra materialized from the steam like a phantom, her iridescent hands already moving across terminals in patterns no human could replicate. The ship's groaning metal quieted as she rerouted power through undocumented systems. Yarrick, grabbing her wrist, "How did you know about these secondary conduits?" Lyra, pulling free, "Your schematics omit necessary modifications. The hidden blueprint." Rhea discovered the truth hours later in the radiation-scorched aftermath. Buried in the ship's logs were Lyra's unauthorized system overrides, precise architectural changes matching Zenthari battlecruiser designs. Rhea, confronting Yarrick, she's retrofitting us into a warship. Those power surges? Stress tests for weapons we don't have. When confronted, Lyra didn't deny it. Preparation isn't betrayal, Commander. The coming storm respects no neutrality. The Ghost Protocol. During routine maintenance, Rhea triggered a hidden panel beneath the antimatter storage unit. Inside lay a holographic map projecting shifting battle lines across known space, and the horizon at its center. Yarrick, studying projections, these Zenthari fleet movements, they're prepping for invasion. Lyra, entering silently, correction, counter-invasion. Your council omitted the Caridian armada massing beyond the Krell belt. She revealed encrypted transmissions showing 14 human colonies already glassed. Your leaders call it border skirmishes. I call it extinction. The reluctant partnership. Rhea's discovery forced an uneasy collaboration. Lyra's armory. Modified photon torpedoes with Zenthari plasma cores. Adaptive shield matrices stolen from Caridian prototypes. Jarrek's conditions. Daily system audits by Rhea's team. All combat decisions remain human-controlled. The tension peaked during a live-fire test of the hybrid weapons. As the target asteroid vaporized, Lyra murmured, "Now you see why they fear us." The midnight defection. Rhea intercepted Lyra at 0230 ship time, catching her transmitting data bursts toward uncharted space. Rhea, blocking the airlock running home to report. Lyra, holding up encryption keys, warning the Illyrian refugees your council abandoned. The revelation split the crew. Faction belief leader. Loyalists Lyra's preparing their defense Yarrick. Skeptics she's orchestrating a takeover Rhea. Neutral survival trumps ideology First Officer Kellen. The unmasking. During a tense briefing, Lyra's biocircuitry glitched, revealing fractal scars beneath her synthetic skin. Yarrick, grabbing medical scanner, these are combat augments. You're not just an operative. Lyra, coolly recalibrating her arm, I'm what remains of the Zenthari 7th Legion. The last who remembers the Caridian's true face. Rhea's voice turned glacial. So we're housing a living weapon. What happens when we're no longer useful? Lyra's response hung in the air like a death sentence, let's hope you never learn the answer. As the horizon plunged toward the volatile Krell belt, Yarrick realized the fragile trust binding them might shatter before enemy fire ever could. The gift had become a lit fuse, and the explosion would reshape the galaxy. Part 4, The Distress Signal. The starship Horizon floated in the cold emptiness of space, its crew on high alert as they approached the source of a distress signal that had crackled through the comms system. Commander Yarrick stood at the helm, his brow furrowed with concern. The asteroid station they were nearing was notorious for pirate activity, and every instinct told him this could be a trap. Arden, what do we know about this signal? Yarrick asked, his voice steadied despite the tension in the air. Arden, the ever-enthusiastic first officer, tapped furiously at his console. It's coming from an unregistered mining station near the Karos belt. The signal is weak but persistent. It's definitely a call for help. Yarrick exchanged glances with Lyra, who stood slightly behind him, her luminous eyes scanning the data on Arden's screen. She had been unusually quiet since their last encounter with pirates, and Yarrick couldn't shake the feeling that she was holding back information. Prepare to drop out of warp, Yarrick ordered. We need to assess the situation before proceeding. As they transitioned into normal space, the asteroid station came into view, a battered structure clinging to life amidst a field of debris. Half of its docking bays were scorched and twisted from plasma fire, and flickering lights hinted at a desperate struggle for survival within. Captain, Lyra spoke up, her voice calm yet urgent. This could be a trap. We should proceed with caution. I'm aware, Yarrick replied tersely. But we can't ignore a distress call. We have to check it out. The crew's preparation. The crew quickly geared up, strapping on their weapons and checking their equipment. Rhea, the chief engineer, looked particularly anxious as she adjusted her plasma rifle. Are we really going in there? She asked, her voice tight with apprehension. That place looks like it's seen better days. We're going in, Yarrick affirmed. But we'll keep our guard up. Arden, you take point with Rhea and Kellen. I'll follow with Lyra. As they prepared to disembark, Lyra stepped closer to Yarrick, her expression inscrutable. You trust them to protect you? She asked softly. Yarrick raised an eyebrow at her question. They're my crew. I trust them with my life. Lyra tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words carefully. Trust is a fragile construct, she said cryptically before stepping back to join him. Inside the station. The air inside the station was thick with tension and the faint smell of ozone, a stark contrast to the sterile environment of the horizon. As they moved deeper into the station, Yarrick felt every instinct on high alert. Shadows loomed in every corner as they fanned out in search of survivors. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon a group of refugees huddled together in a cargo bay, their faces pale and drawn with fear. We've got survivors. Yarrick reported into his comms as he approached them cautiously. Suddenly, a deafening clang echoed through the corridor, followed by the unmistakable hum of plasma rifles charging. Pirates had arrived. Get down! Yarrick shouted as he dove for cover behind a stack of crates. The firefight that ensued was chaotic and brutal. Plasma bolts lit up the dimly lit corridors as Yarrick and his crew fought fiercely against overwhelming odds. They moved with practiced precision, but it was Lyra's unexpected intervention that turned the tide of battle. Lyra's unexpected skills. While Yarrick took cover behind a crate and fired at an approaching pirate, he glanced over to see Lyra standing near a control panel at the far end of the bay. Her fingers danced across its surface with an elegance that seemed almost unnatural. Suddenly, she redirected power from the station's systems to create a force field around their position. Nice work! Yarrick shouted breathlessly as he reloaded his weapon. Lyra met his gaze for a brief moment before returning her focus to the console. I'm overriding their security systems, she said matter-of-factly. Redirecting power to lock down any incoming reinforcements. The pirates were caught off guard by the sudden shift in their advantage as Lyra's quick thinking allowed Jarrek's team to regroup and push back against their attackers. Aftermath of battle. Once they secured the area and ensured all pirates were neutralized or fled, Yarrick surveyed their surroundings while catching his breath. The refugees were shaken but safe now under their protection. Let's get these people aboard, he said firmly to his crew. As they escorted the refugees back toward their ship, Lyra fell into step beside Yarrick again. Her demeanor was calm amidst chaos. It unnerved him more than he cared to admit. You handled yourself well back there, he remarked cautiously. Lyra turned her head slightly toward him but didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked ahead at their path through debris-strewn corridors before finally saying, You underestimate your own capabilities. The hidden truth. Later that evening on board Horizon, as they debriefed in the mess hall over warm rations and stolen contraband whiskey from Rhea's stash, tension hung thick in the air like smoke from an extinguished fire. You've got some serious skills, Kellen said to Lyra during dinner as he attempted to lighten the mood after their harrowing experience. How did you learn to hack into those systems so quickly? Lyra's expression remained inscrutable as she replied coolly, Survival requires adaptability. Yarrick watched as Kellen pressed further for details about her past but was interrupted when Rhea stood up abruptly. I don't mean to be rude, Rhea interjected sharply, but we need to talk about what just happened today, specifically how you managed that force field override without any prior knowledge of this station's systems. Lyra met Rhea's gaze without flinching. "I have knowledge beyond your comprehension," she stated simply before turning her attention back to her meal. A heavy silence fell over them as everyone absorbed her words, an unsettling reminder that Lyra was not just an ally but something much more complex than any of them had anticipated. A moment of reflection. Later that night in his quarters, Yarrick sat alone with a glass of whiskey reflecting on recent events, the ambush at the mining station and Lyra's capabilities that seemed almost superhuman. He replayed every moment in his mind, how effortlessly she had taken control during battle and how little he truly knew about her origins or intentions. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts before Lyra entered without waiting for an invitation. She stood at the threshold for a moment before stepping in fully. "You're troubled," she observed quietly. Yarrick leaned back against his desk and sighed heavily. "You could say that again." "What is it you fear?" she asked bluntly. "I fear what I don't understand," he admitted candidly. "And right now, I don't understand you." Lyra stepped closer until she was just within arm's reach, her presence filled the room like an electric charge. "Then perhaps it is time you learned." With those words hanging between them like an unspoken promise or threat, Yarrick realized he stood on a precipice, one that could lead either toward understanding or disaster, and there was no turning back now as they drifted deeper into unknown territory together.